Hey, how's it going? This is Sean, and this is YEG MS, and I'm coming to you from YOW, which is Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I'm on the road this week for my day job, as I have a conference to attend on Monday, Tuesday of the coming week. And so I thought I'd do one of these on the road. It's actually not... There's been a precedent set. The original pilot episode of this, part of it was recorded while I was standing waiting for a plane at the Kamloops airport. And I've recorded other bits and stuff over time. Once when I was running the Canmore half marathon. So this is not new. It actually kind of fits. This whole episode's going to be kind of tied around running. Well, not kind of, it will be. I think when I last talked to you guys, I mentioned that I'd do my next podcast will be after the Grizzly ultra marathon in Canmore, and that's come and gone. And just interesting the way things work sometimes. Last week I read a news article about some researchers in Ottawa, ironically enough that I'm here, who have made some findings that seem to indicate that running can help regenerate myelin. And so a lot of stuff talking about running this. I'll get into that more. A lot of stuff about running this time. As many of you are aware, I'm a runner, so it's something dear to my heart. And if it can help people in our particular demographic or predicament, or however you want to say it, I think it's valuable for people to know. So why don't I start there? I'm actually not going to edit this one. I think when I get back to my hotel room, I'm just going to upload the raw audio to SoundCloud and just let her go. I may pause it a few times along the way. So currently I was trying to record this actually at the Parliament buildings, but it's pretty windy here in Ottawa today. Sunny, beautiful day, but it's windy. And it just doesn't really work well for recording audio because you get a lot of that hissing. So now I'm taking a stroll along the Rideau Canal. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but that's where I'm walking along it right now. I've never been to Ottawa before. It's a pretty gorgeous city. Yeah, it's beautiful. So right now I'm walking along the Rideau Canal. And so back to what I was saying. Sorry. Maybe I shouldn't walk and talk. I don't think I can do two things at once, but anyway. So these researchers in Ottawa, what they did is they genetically modified some mice to have some smaller brains. And I may mess up some of the technicalities of this, but I'll leave the link to the news article in the companion notes to this, so you can click on it, read it for yourself, and I recommend you do that. Anyway, they genetically modified some mice to have smaller brains. And these genetically modified mice would live no longer than 12 months. But what they found is when they gave the mice free access to run on a treadmill, the mice lived beyond a year, and they found that there was some regeneration in their brains. So they did some more studying, and what they found, that it's actually a specific molecule that's released during exercise, like running, that can have a regenerative effect on the brain and on things like myelin sheaths, which we all know is why we have the problems that we do, because our immune systems attack the myelin sheaths. I'm not going to give you, everyone knows kind of the basics. So that if you're doing lots of running, this particular molecule, which I believe is VGF, it might be VCF. Anyway, it's in the article. Gets released, and there's a regenerative effect. And I found that pretty interesting because when I have to go for my yearly MRI, there always seems to be, the report from the neuro always seems to be around, hey, some of your lesions healed, oh, but you got some new ones, right? So obviously there's some regeneration going on there. Why is that happening? Don't know. Is it directly a result of my running? I can't prove that. I just find it interesting. So I've said it before, and I'll say it, if anyone's considering exercising, you don't have to run ultra marathons. I mean, if you can just start on a stationary bike or just start walking, I think maybe even just setting a goal. I mean, depending on how mobile you are, maybe your goal is just making it to the end of the driveway and back once a day. And if you can do that for a couple weeks, then maybe try and make it to the end of the block and back. I mean, it can just, you break it up into bite-sized pieces, and maybe that can have a positive effect on your condition. It's worth trying, it's worth looking into. Since last time I talked to you guys, I was in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in the United States. I was sent there by the MS Society of Canada. And what it was to attend the Tour of Champions bike tour. And what that is, it's the bike tour for anyone who's raised $10,000 or more. I believe that was the cutoff. So there were 7,000 riders, which, to see it, it was a little overwhelming. I mean, it was organized chaos. It's the only best way I could use, best words I could describe it with is just organized chaos. And so 7,000 riders rode from Cherry Hill, New Jersey to Ocean City. And they had a 35-mile route you could ride, which is give or take in the neighborhood of 50 kilometers. There was an 85, I believe, which would be just over 100. And I think they also had a 125-mile route that they'd set out. The Canadian team was comprised of people from bike tours all over Canada. So there was people from Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and a lot of really cool people. And like I said, seeing 7,000 people at a starting line on bikes, it was just, I didn't ride in it because I had the Grizzly Ultra Marathon coming up a week later, but I just went to take it all in, and it was phenomenal. And next year, I guess the Tour Championships is in Texas, which I'll be going to. So I'm looking forward to that. Hats off to the people that organize that event. Like our event, my home event, the Leduc to Camrose bike tour, usually gets in the neighborhood of about 2,000. And I always thought that was such a colossal undertaking to organize and set up. And, imagine that times 3 and a bit. And that would be what I witnessed down in the States. But it appeared they had a lot of support from the local community, local law enforcement. And the other bonus was getting to see Ocean City. I'd never even heard of Ocean City before I went down there. If anyone's in the Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, that area of the world, I'd certainly recommend checking it out. The boardwalk is amazing. It's a beautiful boardwalk that's, a couple kilometers long, and it's got mini golf and giant pizza and amusement parks, and then they've got a beautiful beach there. People were still surfing. So it was really, really cool. And then, like I said, about a week later, I was in Canmore and ran the Grizzly ultramarathon there. Now, for those of you who follow the really long run or what I do with that, or have any interest, that's a 80-kilometer route. But I would doubt there's even 100 meters of, like 110 yards of elevation shift. It's relatively flat. There's only really two, what I would call even, I wouldn't even call them significant, but there's only two pronounced hills during the route. And last year it took me, or this year, it took me just under 9 hours to complete it. The Grizzly in Canmore was a 50K route, but there was 1,600 meters of elevation change. So the pace was a lot slower, and it was done in 5 stages. I unfortunately had to pull out at 40 kilometers in, because I ended up with a pretty nasty bout of plantar fasciitis in my right foot. And what that is, basically it's an overuse injury. Your Achilles tendon wraps underneath your heel and attaches. And just putting the miles on my body that I have, I've been relatively lucky being injury-free, and it finally happened. But the 40K that I did, the 3 stages I did were the 3 hardest stages, so I'm still happy with that. And the guy that I ran it with, Paul, he gutted it out, and they give you 9 hours to finish the 50 kilometers, and he finished with just under 5 minutes to go. The perseverance he showed and just the willingness to push himself was unreal. It was awesome just to be there at the finish line to see him come across. So, but that trail running is just so much different. I mean, I've fallen in love with it, but it's way different than what I'm used to doing. Stage 3 of the Canmore Grizzly, my lord, it's if you're not going straight up, you're going straight down. It's about a 15K loop, but it could be 100. I mean, it's very steep, very technical, and it had snowed the night before and it had started melting, so it was kind of like being on a mudslide. And there was a couple times I really thought I was going to fall hard, but fortunately I didn't. And the other interesting thing about the Grizzly, it's mandatory that you carry bear spray. And if anyone who's done any trail running would know, there's times where you're completely by yourself on the course, and you got this big can of bear spray, on your hip, and you're thinking, oh, you hear any rustles in the bushes, and you're thinking, oh boy, this could be it, eh? But I didn't actually see any bears, so that was that was good. So now I have to, obviously I'm not running because of the problems with my Achilles and the right foot there. I suspect I probably won't be able to run for another good month and a half, which sucks, but so I've altered it. Now what I'm doing is I'm spending an hour on a stationary bike every day just to maintain my fitness until I can start running again. One of the things that research study mentioned about helping you, having a regenerative effect on your nervous system, with exercise and that, is that it also moderates your mood, and it picks you up and makes you feel good, and there's an antidepressive effect. And I know that I'm not alone, and that other MSs are the same as me, that depression is definitely something that we have to be aware of, and it's something I've struggled with. And I know it's important to be cognizant of that, and if you can find tools to help you manage it, So for me, not exercising isn't an option, because not only do I believe that the running has a positive effect on the disease? I think that just mentally, it definitely has a positive effect. So for me, not running is just simply not an option. I'm not going to lie to you, as I'm talking to you right now, two people just blew by me on the path here running, and pretty jealous because I would love to have been able to run along this canal. I mean, this is pretty spectacular. But there's always next time. And I've got to go on some pretty cool runs around North America. So, I mean, I did some running when I was in New Jersey, just light stuff, around Cherry Hill and down the boardwalk when I was in Ocean City. Later last year, I got to go for a run when I was in Corrado Island, just attached to San Diego there. So, and last year I also got to run on Stanley Park in Vancouver. So, all in all, I certainly can't complain about not being able to run this trip, but it's really, it's killing me right now because this canal is something else. It would just be it looks like this is the first time I've walked it. I don't know how long it goes, but it looks like it goes forever. So, what else did I want to talk to you guys about? Really long run 2017. That's something we can talk about. So I'm through doing the really long run. I met a lot of really cool people. One of them is a gentleman by the name of Mark, and it's just funny how things work out. It really is. Turns out Mark is an ultra distance runner, and he makes me look like a twisted joke, to be honest with you. He does 100-mile events up and down mountains. He did the death race earlier this year, and these are the types of things where he'll be running for honestly like 24 hours at a time. Anyway, he had approached the MS Society just over a year ago about doing a run, and they said, well, you should talk to this Sean guy, he's already doing this thing. And so we got to talking, we've done some runs together, and super good guy, and he wants to organize it. And in order for the event to grow, I'm realized that we have to change what we're doing. We just fundamentally have to change the story of, like, my story's getting old. A 40-year-old fat dad running an ultra once a year with MS. It's been told, and in order to keep things fresh, it constantly needs to be new. So, and the other thing is, I've been approached by people who like to run in it, but aren't comfortable running on the highway, and totally get that. So we're looking at changing it into a relay, and the rough idea right now, and this is subject to change, is that anyone could enter a team. The team can have as many members on it as you like, and each team member can run any distance that they like. So that way, it's far more inclusive. So, for example, if somebody with MS wants to take part, but they don't have full mobility, or they're challenged with their mobility, they could, for example, do the last 50 meters, the last 10 meters, it doesn't matter. And then they can recruit people to run 5, 10, 15, because there's different types of runners. Some people are a solid 5K. Some are a solid 10. Some don't like those shorter, more sprint type runs. They prefer to do longer distances. So I guess the point here being is it's about being inclusive, and rather than doing it out on the highway, we'll set up a 50 or 60K route in the Edmonton River Valley on the public trails, because then that way we're not dealing with traffic and it's safer, people feel safer, and then hopefully encourage more people to participate. I mean, each year I've had, 20 plus support runners, but they're out there running their ass off for me. They're not, and we just like to grow the event so that, anyone with MS or anyone who wants to support somebody with MS can either enter or join a team and go about it that way. So we have a meeting. Mark and I have a meeting with the MS, and my mom have a meeting with the MS Society next Friday to start kind of, planning for 2017. And as far as my participation in the run, I'm going to run the whole thing still. So, because that's what I like to do. But, and I think I have a few screws loose. I definitely think that, anyway, it doesn't matter. That's what we're gonna change it into, and I'm looking forward to it. So, how far have I gone in here? How many minutes we got recorded? So, it's perfect. So, I think it was last episode I said I was going to start to review things. So, this is the review section of the podcast, and like I said, I'm not editing this one. When I get back to the hotel room, this audio is just going to get shot up to the SoundCloud, and I'm just trying different things to the podcast to try and keep it fresh, not only for people who listen, but also for myself. So, anyway, my review. Since we're on the topic of running, as you can imagine, doing the really long run 2 years in a row, I go through a hell of a lot of sneakers. I was trying to count. I mean, I couldn't even count. Best guess based on the tracking I've done is that I've run over 3,000 kilometers in the last 2 years. Don't know what that is in miles. It would be, but it's a lot. A good pair of shoes is good for 150, 200 kilometers. So, I push it. I push my shoes further than they probably should, but it's just an economy thing. It's just, a decent pair of sneakers is going to cost you in the neighborhood of $200. And if you're going through, like when I'm really putting miles on before the runs, I'm in excess of 100 kilometers a week sometimes. So I can't be paying, I can't be buying 2 pairs of shoes a month. I do, that said, I do get, shoes, given to me by different sponsors, but I'm not a sponsored athlete in the sense that they just give you as many pairs of shoes as I need. I get some shoes sometimes. So this is my review of sneakers. In the past two years, I've run in Asics, I've run in New Balance, I've run in Adidas, and I've run in Saucony. Far and away my favorite shoe, I don't have one. I've got a tie. I would say the Saucony that I'm wearing right now, which are the Triumph, and my Adidas Energy Boost they would be comparable. The plus side on the Sauconys, they're probably the most comfortable shoe I've ever worn. I like the fact when you put them on, the tongue isn't a tongue, it's actually like a mesh that goes around your foot, and that's the same with my Energy Boost. They just feel a lot more secure and snug on your foot. The plus side on the Adidas, when Adidas agreed to sponsor the run last year, their marketing person told me Sean, you'll get the boost foam is different than everybody else. You're going to get 300 or 400 kilometers out of a pair of shoes. And I'm a skeptical person by nature, and I just thought, yeah, right. You don't understand how much I run. So far, I've probably put 200K on that pair of shoes, maybe a little bit more, and they still feel as springy as when I first bought them. Well, I didn't buy them when they were given to me. So from a durability standpoint, like for example, the Saucony, and I'm wearing the Saucony right now as I walk, and they're fine to walk in now, but the cushioning's gone as far as running goes. So for longevity, the Adidas would get the nod there. Other shoes that I've worn that I really like, the A6 Gel. The ones I would use are the Nimbus 16. And they were my go-to shoe before I started wearing the Saucony or the Adidas. Good shoe. I find that the upper breaks down faster than the Adidas or the Saucony. And that may or may not seem like a big deal, but it is when the upper breaks down, your foot starts to move around. But I've put a lot of miles on Adidas shoes, or not Adidas, sorry, ASICS shoes, and overall they were quite good. My least favorite of the 4 brands that I've run in were the New Balance. On the plus side, the New Balance were incredibly light. They're the lightest shoe I've ever worn, but there's a trade-off. I'm a heavier guy, and wearing a really light shoe, obviously they're not as robust, and they just broke down way too fast, like way too fast. For a lighter runner, like I'm 215 pounds, where a lighter runner might actually get better uses out of them. For a bigger person, they weren't. And I didn't find the cushioning was all that great. But again, I'm a bigger guy, so that could just be my experience with the shoe, and where a lighter person would get a better, definitely better cushioning. So to sum up, at the top of my list for shoes, I've actually run with 2 pairs of Adidas. It was the Energy Boost and also the Supernova. The Supernova is more expensive, but actually I like the Energy Boost better. And for that reason the Supernova has more of that traditional tongue, where the Energy Boost has like that mesh. It's not really a tongue, it kind of wraps around your foot, like the Saucony Triumph. So if I had to pick out of those 2, I'd say the Energy Boost. But up the top, it's Saucony and Adidas would be number 1 and 1A, followed by ASICS, and then followed by New Balance. So that's my review for this podcast. Another thing interesting thing when looking at the stats, that it's really, the day and age we live in, it's just a pretty amazing time. When I started YEG MS, the intent was for people with MS in Northern Alberta, Canada. And I mean, obviously I didn't not want other people from other places to listen, but the expectation wasn't that other people would listen. As of the last podcast and last time I pulled the statistics, the United States actually has more listeners to this podcast than Canada does. It's just slightly more, but there's more. And I have regular listeners all over the U.S., and not to make this sound like there's thousands and thousands of people to listen to this thing. We're only talking about, hundreds, not thousands. But, the distribution, and there's a few even now over in the UK and that. So for anybody who listens or regular listens or takes any value from anything from this, I just want to say thanks for listening, because when I see people, the reason why I keep doing it is because people keep downloading it. So, as long as there's people out there listening, then I will continue to prattle on and that. So thanks to anyone out there who's listening. And if you have any suggestions for me, you can get a hold of me through my website or Twitter or that. So It's the wind starting to pick up here again, so I got to cut this a little bit short, but I'll be back in a couple weeks with another one, and thanks for listening.